Hey everyone, this is Rocky from WeLearnChess.com, and continuing with the checkmate theme this week, we're going to look at another pretty rare but fun checkmate called the Epaulette Mate. Epaulette is sort of a rare word itself. It refers to either protective padding on the shoulders or some sort of decorative ornamentation of the shoulder wear. So something like in a military uniform or maybe if it's decorative in certain cultures. But yeah, it's a rare word and a rare mate. But the pattern here is where the king is boxed in by its own pieces. So it usually happens on the back rank, or in rare cases it could happen on the side. But the king is blocked in here, and these are like the king's shoulder pads, which is where the term epaulette mate comes from. And then a piece, usually the queen, will deliver mate because it covers these squares and the king's boxed in. But it doesn't have to necessarily be the queen. Like one of these pieces could be a queen. Not in this case, but in other cases. We'll see an example of that. And the piece delivering mate doesn't have to necessarily be the queen. It could be a rook, depending on the situation. Here, obviously, the rook wouldn't work because the king could escape. But we'll look at some examples from games from the world's top players, and look at a game that I just played online where I finally got to play this kind of mate, not exactly in this pattern, but one of the first times I think I can remember. I don't know if I've played it before. It doesn't come up that often. So let's take a look here at a few different games. So first we'll take a look at a game from 2001 from the Epaulette Mates tournament. I think that's pretty close to how you're supposed to pronounce it. The Tata Steel Chess Tournament, which is it's held every year. The next one I think is January 2016. You can look on their webpage, and it always has the best players in the world, and makes for some really exciting chess. So, and there's also some great coverage on different YouTube channels on, deep analysis of all the games, like the Chess Explained channel, and a couple other channels do some good analysis there. So, okay, this position here, this game is between Loke van Wiele and Alexander Morozevich, two of the top players at the time, and also continue to be very highly competitive today. So here it's black to move, and a feature of the position here is that both the kings are unsafe and probably will be unsafe all game. But black uses this opportunity actually to castle, and now it looks like the white king's a little more in trouble than the black king, because black has this great pressure down the d file. He's already got his rook on this weak g file that's opened up for him, and white's bishops look a little bit better right now, but it's going to be a matter of tempi in this game, and who can attack first. So let's see what white does here. I mean, castling looks pretty difficult, because after castling, at the very least, black probably has something like, yeah, bishop h3 is probably strong there, but yeah, so I guess that's why he decided not to castle, and he just went for complications. So Van Wiele took this pawn and allows rook takes g2, which looks like it's getting pretty crazy already. And Morozevich finds just a really nice continuation from here. So obviously he saw that he was going to get forked, and it's not like it necessarily wins a piece. I mean, if Van Wiele was just to, for example, drop his rook back, the bishop is covered. But that wasn't his idea. He just leaves the rook on pre, and he plays this nice in-between move with the knight. So now if you're Van Wiele, you have to decide if you want to take this rook or if you want to take this bishop or do something else. Well, he decides to take the bishop because obviously the idea here is to try to exploit this diagonal and pin the queen, so he gets at least a tempo out of this. But unfortunately that leaves the rook down here in attacking mode, so we'll see the ramifications of that in a moment. Okay, so the reason for this knight move was to play this check, and obviously the king has to go over to the king side because it doesn't want to step in any discoveries, so kind of forced into this cramped little area, which is already looking pretty uncomfortable. Okay, so the next move here is also forcing, obviously, and when you play these long combinations, the more forcing moves you can work into them, usually the better, as long as they're obviously the best moves. Sometimes quiet moves are the strongest, and they're actually really hard to see because we're so focused on looking for checks and captures. But in this case, it's a pretty tense position, and the forcing moves help set this up. So this forces the king over further into this little box, and now we're kind of seeing here that the king has very little place to go, and this g-file is open, so it's not looking very good for white right here. Black takes time out to just get out of this pin here, and white desperately tries to get the queens off the board because it's becoming pretty clear that his king is the less safe of the two. And here Morozevich plays a nice move, takes this knight off the board, and keeps this king boxed in this way. So he gets his piece back too. So now I think material is even, maybe one pawn different, but it's a drastic difference in the king safety, so that's the main feature here. So here, white probably just had to accept, pretty much an outright lost endgame. So I guess maybe it doesn't matter too much that he stumbled into this mate. He probably has to take the queen off here, but the problem is already you're facing this idea of the king sort of being trapped in a box. This bishop can't move, because if it moves, then the rook's going to come over here and deliver mate. So basically the bishop's lost, so this is just going to be a huge material advantage, and for a super GM it's not going to be very hard to convert that. Actually, he'll probably just resign on the next move. So I guess seeing that was just dead lost, Van Wheelie tried to do something else, but he actually stumbled into this mate. So he played h4 with the idea of just keeping the rook out of this square, I think, and also giving an escape square for his king over here. But Morozevich quickly takes care of that and covers this escape square up, so keeping this king in the box. And so now this is covered here, and it doesn't look like it's really possible for him to deliver this Epaulette mate because the squares are covered. Like this square is covered here, this square is covered by the bishop. But there's actually there is a potential way to do it, and Van Wheelie actually really stumbles into this by just completely boxing his king. And also the knight has this escape square too, which is kind of funny. But here actually there is a forced way to do this, and that's just to give this check here first. And because nothing can interpose here on the checking line, on the g-file, on this bit, this rook has to be taken, and then this queen, which had to be taken off the board before, is the one that delivers mate. So this is sort of a long distance Epaulette mate, where I saw in the first screen we had it here, which is often where you'll see it, but sometimes it can happen long range too if the other squares are covered. So this is kind of a fun example, and it's given on the Wikipedia page too, so if you look up Epaulette mate, you'll see a few of the examples that I'm given, but I want to show it this way because it's a little easier to look at it on video. Okay, so let's take a look at another game. I'll just put this on pause for a second while I load it up. Okay, we're back here, and the next game is one that's frequently looked at when this Epaulette mate is talked about, because it came from a couple of the highest players and the strongest players in the world. So obviously Vishy Anand and Magnus Carlsen, former world champ and current world champ. And this was in 2009 at the World Blitz Championship. And Anand here, with the white pieces, simplified into an endgame with 2 rooks versus a queen. And there's a few factors to decide. The 2 rooks can often be stronger than the queen, but there's a few factors that sort of dictate whether this is going to be a good idea or not to go in for the 2 rooks. One of the biggest factors is king safety. As you'll see here, the king doesn't really have much shelter. Another factor that can come into play is a far advanced passed pawn. A lot of times the 2 rooks can gang up on a pawn and just win the pawns. So if you have good shelter for your king, and your rooks can sort of just form their battery and just go after pawns, or you can form some sort of fortress or something like that, then you should be okay, maybe even better. But yeah, if your king can't get safe, or if the third issue that I would say is probably piece coordination. If you can't get your rooks coordinated very easily, like if it takes a few moves, sometimes that's too long, and the queen can find a way to fork one of your rooks, or maybe get the pawn advanced, or do something else that's gonna disrupt your ability to defend. So in this case, it's not really about passed pawns, but it is about king safety and a little bit about piece coordination of the rooks. So Carlsen finds this nice way to get the king into an uncomfortable position. He also wins a couple pawns in the meantime. So without going into all the details here, we do actually see some, I forgot there were some passed pawns actually here, which makes it really tough because once your rooks have to spread out, this is the problem. Like if your rooks, ever have to break up, in order to defend, then you're really opening yourself up to dangers of forks and things like that. So um, Carlsen continues to give checks and just maneuver Anand's king into an uncomfortable position. And he is able to get his two rooks together. Obviously, the idea is to stop this passed pawn, but now his king is really boxed in, and he realizes that. He tries to get out of it, but now he's into this sort of epaulette formation where he's not in the. I keep saying epaulette, epaulette. Okay, yeah. Now he's not really into this typical formation where the king is on the back rank, but here because of this pawn that's been pushed, Carlsen's actually able to just give mate in one. And again, this was a blitz game, but at the same time, there probably wasn't much for Anand to do. He was probably going to lose this eventually anyway. But stumbling into this was kind of interesting. So he gets hit with this Epaulette Mate where the shoulder pads, if you will, are a little bit behind, but it's the same pattern here where the king's boxed in. So kind of a fun one to look at. And let's look at another one by Carlsen as well. I'll just load this up. Okay, so we've got the next game up here, and this one also by Carlsen, as I mentioned, but this one was from a long time ago when he was just 13 years old. I think it was the same year when he had that draw against Kasparov. But anyway, that was a different tournament, I believe. This was also in Vikings, and his opponent I wasn't familiar with. I'm not sure if it's Sipke or Sipke Ernst. He's a Dutch Grandmaster. I'm not sure of his ELO, what it was at the time. Actually, I can quickly check. Like ELO. Yeah, okay, so it looks like Carlsen was 2484 at the time, and Ernst was 2474 at the time, so they were pretty close then there. Okay, so let's actually go through this game because it's pretty cool. Like a lot of times you see Carlsen play these slow positional masterpieces, but here we get a classical Caro Kann, and becomes pretty wild pretty quickly. And we see some fun sacrifices here by the soon-to-be world champion, or I guess not too soon. This is all standard here. I think up to here is still theory, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure where we leave the book opening. It might be right around here. But okay, so Carlsen just gets his king to safety here. And it looks like everything's fine here for black, and then Carlsen goes in for some fun complications. So first he takes off this knight, and he drops his other knight into this great attacking square here, covers a lot of squares on the board, and he just repositions his pieces here because he's already got his attack in mind, and he goes for the sacrifice right away, which is just fun to watch here. So he's just trying to open up the king here, and he gets an attack and a couple pawns for the knight. The black king's already sort of looking a little uncomfortable, sort of cowering here in the corner. And Carlsen sacks another piece here, just trying to rip open the king side. And here, already it looks like Carlsen's gonna get most of his material back. He will still be down a rook after this, but the black king is just pretty much toast here if white plays precisely. And of course, we all know Carlsen is master at playing precisely. So here slowly again he maneuvers the black king into sort of this boxed position. White is down a rook, so he has to make sure that he does this correctly. And it looks like everything is fine here for black. He's attacking the queen, he's got an extra rook, white's back rank is weak, and actually black's threatening mate in one. But it turns out that white actually has mate in one first, and if you want to put your video on pause and try to find it, then go ahead and do that. Okay, so this shouldn't be too hard after seeing the pattern, but the fun thing is that we see this actually in the middle of the board, which is really rare. And we see this Epaulette Mate here with the shoulder pads, but the king's actually not on the back rank, but because this rook covers this whole file, it's essentially the same thing. King can't go backwards, and the queen has the square, so this is kind of a funny sideways one that is even more rare than the regular one, which is also rare. So really fun to watch this one too. A nice game by Carlsen with a couple sacrifices there. Not something you see too often from him, but yeah, he was younger then too, so he probably had a little bit different style. I haven't looked at a lot of his games when he was younger, but a lot of fun here. So all right, let's put this on pause one more second, and I'll load up an old classical game, and then we'll look at my game. All right, so we're back here, and I'm just going to take a look at a classic game. between Jackson Whip's Showalter, and I assume this was some sort of exhibition because the only name I see for his opponent is Logan. I'm not sure where it was, circa 1890. And Showalter, who I didn't really know anything about, to be honest, but when I looked him up, I saw that he was a five-time U.S. Champion, and he also was in the finals of the U.S. Championship six other times. Three of those losses were to pretty well-known players, two of them to Pillsbury and one of them to Frank Marshall, World Championship contender. Not not a great one, I guess, but I think he had an okay score, Showalter, against Lasker as well. So definitely not a no slouch in terms of his chess abilities, and in this game is just really fun to look at. So I'm not really looking at these games with computers just because I feel like you can always find small mistakes or ways to improve with the computer, but just kind of look at this from an artistic perspective and see how these players are able to get their opponents into these fun mates. So okay, it's black to move here. Showalter has the white pieces, and black chases the queen, and white tries to keep it centralized here. He has ideas of attacking this king, which is caught in the center, and black tries to get his knight from the edge of the board into the game, but white actually just picks this off with the really interesting idea of distracting the queen from the defense of the king. So after the queen leaves, now this move actually just blocks the queen off from defense, and now black kind of realizes that this was a little bit of a trap that he fell into, so he tries to get his queen onto another diagonal so that she can come back for defense. But already white has really interesting combination in mind. So it starts with this check here, which is pretty forcing because the king doesn't want to go into discoveries here, where too much material will be lost, so he's got to go the other way. But now, as we've seen with these other mating examples, where going into this small box can sometimes really hurt you. So white doesn't hesitate here and just rips right into the king side, trying to destroy this pawn shelter so that he can find a way to deliver mate. And black tries to play this intermezzo to chase the queen, but now we see this typical formation already on the board, and that probably opened up or sounded an alarm bell for Showalter if he didn't already have this variation calculated in his mind ahead of time, which is quite possible. So another fun move here with this knight. This knight has just been sort of a blocking piece, sort of like setting picks, if you will, to use basketball terminology, just to allow the white pieces an extra tempo to try to get into the correct attacking formation. This is a really funny formation. I mean, like, look, the knight is sort of en prise, the bishop's en prise, the knight's also pinned to the queen. You do see sort of a weak back rank. You see this diagonal here, which looks pretty vicious. So, as usual, things are going both ways on the board, and you always have to, figure out if you have enough tempo to complete your attack before you get annihilated as well. Although I don't think black would be able to do enough. But okay, so black actually does go in for this check here instead of taking off a piece. But I guess this idea is that he wants to, take this bishop and then open up the g file here, and probably feels like, his attack's going to come first, but he's in for a surprise. So after this check here, king moves. Instead of taking the bishop this way, I guess black realized the danger he was in, so he just came back and took this with the queen. I was actually expecting pawn takes there, but this actually allows for a fun variation to get into this Epaulette Mate. And actually, if you want to pause the video here and see how you can do it from this position, this will be a little bit tougher than the last one. Alright, so if you saw the first move here, which is this knight check, good for you. So now this is quite forcing, obviously. The queen has to take this, otherwise it's mate. So queen takes. Then rook delivers check here, and this basically is the Epaulette Mate, but the black still has a piece that can interpose. A couple of pieces. This is kind of funny. This is like computer chess. So this kind of maybe suggests, maybe this is indicative of the times where people let their opponents play the mate out. Like, he probably saw the mate was coming. I don't think he had ideas of a back rank mate here, but maybe this was the idea. Maybe he thought that he was gonna do something. I don't know. It's hard to tell because it's hard to tell what the opponent's rating was. But here, after this final sacrifice, then it's all over. We get into this typical position here. So I don't know if that was like mate in 6 or whatever, how many moves that was, but we get into this classical position here, and then the queen has these squares. So really fun one to look at, but I really liked how the knight was used to block on 2 different instances to allow white to get these pieces into formation, everything on pre, allowing this check. Just a lot of fun to look at. So I'll have to check out some more games by this guy later on and see. Maybe he had some good attacking games. So, all right, so that's it for the classical games. So let's take a look at the game I was able to just play on chess.com. So I'll just load that up. So this was a 15-10 game that I just played on chess.com, and I had the white pieces, and just played e4 like I usually do. And for the second time today, I had to face this Russian defense, Petrov's defense, and I still haven't looked at it in detail, but I have looked at an old video by GM Roman Jijiasvili. I have a lot of his videos apparently because I'm always mentioning him. And he did this video on this fun variation where, you know, if black bumps the knight, which is pretty common, and black takes, you actually just play knight c3 and you allow this capture. If black were to have captured here, you just take back. And the idea is something like, doesn't have to happen this way, but the idea is that you're going to castle long. So you know, it could be the knight sometimes comes out to c6 or sometimes goes to d7. But let's just say, for sake of example, it goes here, maybe castles, maybe white comes in with this pin. You can just move your king over. You actually can let black take this because you want to open up the g file. So even if it happened like something like this, where let's say before black castles, let's say he played here, you could actually just play queen d2 and just allow this doubling the pawns, which actually I don't think black should do that because now he's kind of in a problem. Like now it's obvious that it was probably obvious before, but now it's really obvious that white wants to castle long, and it's a little bit tough for black to decide if he wants to castle kingside. I mean, now the g file's ripped open, so if he wants to castle queenside, he's got to use up a couple moves to get his pieces out, and maybe a little bit not the fashion that he would want. So even then, I think white would have a slight advantage. He's got the 2 bishops. He's going to have a lead in development. His piece activity is a little bit easier. It's a little bit easier to get his pieces to good squares. It doesn't mean that, you know, white's flat out winning. I mean, he does have these double pawns, but definitely I think it's going to be easier to play for white. So yeah, this is a fun variation I like to play. I mean, there's definitely ways for black to play better against this, and you know, oftentimes this bishop is on this diagonal, and you've got to, you know, play a move like you don't have a knight here anymore, so you've got to play a move like b3 sometimes and further weaken your queenside. And sometimes black's attack comes faster than yours, so typical of these opposite side castling games where you have to be really careful. It's sharp. But anyway, my opponent didn't go for this. Instead, he dropped the knight back, and I remember from the video, from Roman's video, that he said that this wasn't good. And I remember that when we were playing, but I was trying to remember why. And I couldn't really remember why. I think just, you know, taking some space in the center and developing is supposed to be fine. Like maybe this is just like a worse version of the Philidor or something for black. I'm not sure. But anyway, his pieces are a little bit cramped, so I just developed with the same idea of castling long, and here we see this idea of just allowing this capture, and actually black goes in for it. So then I think he realized he was, you know, after he'd done that, he was like, oh, wait a second, maybe no, I don't want to castle. So this move to me seemed kind of slow. I guess he wanted to push the bishop back, and then maybe he had ideas of rerouting this bishop to here and castling long that way. Still seems a little bit dangerous because I've got 2 ways to pry open this, like two ways to lever open this G pawn. So if he goes in for that plan, then it still seems a little bit shaky. I just castled, and now I think he was trying to decide, like, maybe I'll castle queenside. So on this move, I was trying to find, you know, already ways where I could keep the pressure on, because I didn't want to just let him castle. And it's not always easy to find, you know, the best moves. First thing I did was just play the rook to the g file, just to kind of like remind him of this weakness and make him, you know, perhaps play a move that he doesn't want to play. So now this g file is really looking weak. So if he ever tries this plan of going this way, I'm going to have both of these pawns potentially to break up this king side. So he probably isn't going to want to castle king side anymore. So he moves his knight over, and he wants to give the queen a square, I think, so that he can castle queen side. So now I had to really think here, like, how can I, try to prevent castling for the moment. I had ideas of playing like knight b5, just so that, like, after queen moves, it would be hard for him to castle, because normally the knight's on like c6 and it holds this a7 square, but it wouldn't be holding it. But he could just bump the knight. And I was thinking actually that I would gain something by that, like if plays here and maybe bumps the knight, and I just drop back. He still has to move the queen, and his queen side's a little bit weak too. So now he's got to decide. And also, if he wants to try to push pawns, like if he decides he does want to castle king side, and he wants to try to push pawns, his knight's in the way already. So whatever he does is going to be a little bit slow, I guess, is the point. But I didn't end up going for this because after looking at it for a while, I just wanted to go with what I felt was like a little more forceful move, and I played bishop h3. I just wanted to keep an eye on this diagonal and at least make him make some sort of concession. If he wants to castle, he's gonna have to like stick a knight there. He's gonna have to, like, I don't even know, because right now if he sticks a knight there, he's got to use another move to get his bishop out of the way. So something like this, where if he did something like this, and oops, there goes my connection. Come on, connection. Okay, sorry about that, guys. The looks like either my internet or the live chess.com server went out for a moment, so I just had to reload this, and I kind of lost track of where I was. But I remember I was sort of talking about here the difficulties of black castling queenside. So he's got to find a way to do it. If he clogs up this square with a knight, then the queen's not going to be able to get out unless he does something. Like if he did something like this, and I'll make moves where I'm not even pressuring black. Like if he has no pressure on him whatsoever, maybe he could do something like this, and then again, let's just say I make a nothing move. He could do something like this, and if I made another nothing move, which I don't even know how I would do that, then maybe something like this, he could castle this way. But that's a lot of moves, and of course I'm not just going to sit there and not do anything. So he's going to have a little bit of difficulty. So what he tried to do was try to alleviate some of the pressure, I guess. He thought he was going to get a couple pieces off the board, which he does. But in the process, he's got to make some concessions. So a lot of times when you're under attack, you have to give up some things if you want to try to survive. And he doesn't have to give up any material, actually. This wasn't the best move according to the computer, but it also wasn't terrible. So he succeeds in getting a couple pieces off the board, but you can see that he does have some weaknesses in his pawn structure, and still it's not so easy for him to castle. Also better developed, and my pieces are more active. So he plays a move again, trying to simplify. And it's kind of funny, but like when I play, not everybody who plays like the Russian defense, but just a lot of times when you see that defense, you'll see somebody who likes to go for a lot of trades and simplify into sort of an endgame. I don't know if it's because they like to play endgames. Maybe it is for some people, or maybe it's that they don't like to deal with all the tactical pressure on the board. Like maybe they're just sometimes, I'm not saying everyone, but maybe sometimes they just prefer more positional based games as opposed to tactics, so they try to get some, like especially the queens, off the board. So here he tries to get the queens off the board, but he's made another weakness in his structure here, and of course with his weak king in the center, there's no way I'm gonna do this voluntarily unless I have to. So I switched over here just to keep the pressure on. Again, maybe he's trying to revert back to this idea of getting this bishop back and castling this way if he has to. So he's really struggling here to try to find ways to get out of trouble here. And I couldn't decide here which pawn pushes to go for, because I also like this idea of pushing e4 and then e5. I can't remember which one the computer likes better either, but I just wanted to start to pry open the position. So king in the center, just try to open lines. And so his idea now is, I thought, was to probably try to trade queens. He would have to give up a pawn to do that, so I didn't see it as the end of the world, but I still wanted to try to create threats. I wanted to get my king out of this diagonal because I could see where instances would come where a check would come on this square. And I felt like I still had a moment to do this, but because again, if he wants to get out of this, he's going to have to give a pawn, and he seemed a little bit reluctant to do that. Again, a lot of players, I feel like, you can't like just characterize everyone, but you can get a sense of who you're playing sometimes. Where, if they choose sort of a passive defense, and they're not willing to give up a pawn, you can kind of sense that they're really concerned about being a pawn down. They, because maybe that's how they win games. They get up a pawn and they win that way, so they see sort of the danger in that. But okay, so he tried to fix his pawn structure here and also keep this pawn from moving, but it actually doesn't work. I actually could have played this pawn push. It would have been even better right away, but this turns out to be not that bad. This was another reason I wanted to get off this diagonal. But okay, so here already I was just trying to open up the position more and more, and I thought maybe he would try to trade queens here, but he played this move here, which actually blunders the game right away. So I did think about this for a while, and I saw the move that the computer wanted me to play, like afterwards when I looked. I went for this just because I wanted to keep pressure, as much pressure as I could, and maybe keep his queen honest about if he ever had thoughts of maybe moving. Where like now if he moves, he's going to lose, probably even 2 pawns, or maybe more material. So, if he wasn't willing to do it for 1 pawn, even to save his king, then he's probably not going to do it for potentially 2 pawns, depending on what happens. So, but here actually better was just to play this rook over, and now, I mean, yeah, I'm not really sure what the best move here is. Like maybe trying to create a barrier here, but then you're just you're still gonna have your queen skewered to your king. I'll have to look at the computer analysis again to see what the correct variation was there. But in any case, I didn't go for this. I went up for rook g7, which keeps a lot of pressure on too, and your opponent's likely to make some mistakes when you keep the pressure on. So again, he's probably trying to find either another way to trade queens, or maybe sneak his king over if he can, although that's going to be really hard, or maybe just to get him more trades, which I think is what he ended up going for. So I took, and he takes with the rook, so he gets a tempo. I saw that he was going to get this beforehand, and I was trying to decide what I was going to play. I eventually played this check, which actually isn't very good, just because I don't have a follow-up. For some reason, I was just thinking about queen blocks, and I start grabbing material, but obviously he can block with the rook, so that was just kind of like probably not a great move. But here he makes another mistake, and again under pressure, where this looks like a great move because it attacks my rook, and it sets up a discovery for not a back rank checkmate because my queen has this, but at the very least, it's uncomfortable because pieces are coming off the board. So it looks like black just turned the tables on white here, but actually white has a forced mate now in 4. So if you want to stop your video and see if you can find it, go ahead. All right, so the forcing continuation starts with this rook check, and then obviously rook has to take, queen takes, this is all forced, queen has to block, and now you come over for this this fun mate, and actually I mean, he either let me play it or didn't realize that it was mate, but everything's covered here, and we see the 2 shoulder pads, which actually, in sort of a rare case where the queen is one of the shoulder pads and a rook rather than a queen is giving the mate. Of course, there's some combination of factors here, but the final mate is given here by the rook, and of course the bishop holds this 1 escape square, which is kind of nice. So pretty cool instance of the Epaulette Mate that I got to play, and I think maybe the only time that I've gotten to play it, but a lot of fun, and hopefully you get to play one soon in your games, and I hope you enjoyed this video.